campaign at this point to discredit Dr. Fauci, who is the nation's top infectious disease expert?
Because we're not. If one man from my administration doesn't like him because he made a few mistakes. Look, Dr. Fauci said don't wear a mask. Dr. Fauci told me not to ban China. It would be a big mistake. I did it over and above his recommendation. Dr. Fauci then said you saved tens of thousands of lives, more than that. He said you saved tens of thousands of lives. Dr. Fauci's made some mistakes, but I spoke to him yesterday at length. I have a very good relationship with Dr. Fauci.
But sir, this weekend, your White House put out a series of statements, so-called mistakes, that Dr. Fauci had made. One of your closest aides, one of your right-hand men, Daniel Scavino, put out this. Have you seen this?
Well,
this cartoon? Dr. Fawcett, it shows him as a leaker and an alarmist.
Oh, I don't know that he's a leaker.
Why would
he's a little bit of an alarmist. That's okay. A little bit of an alarmist.
I'm an alarmist?
A little bit of it.
Trump is talking out two sides of his mouth. In one case, we're not trying to undermine Dr. Fauci. And then in the very next breath, attacking Dr. Fauci. Whatever you want to think, whatever Trump wants to think, Dr. Fauci is the guy who the public trusts when they're looking at the administration in regards to who's telling the truth or who's most likely to tell the truth. And fact of the matter is whether you want to call Fauci an alarmist or right or not, whether you want to call Fauci an alarmist or not, he has been right. From the standpoint of Fauci making the basic argument that, oh my God, this doesn't look good and things are going to go extremely bad, that has been correct. Trump has been trying to basically ignore all of the damage that has taken place. 140,000 people have lost their lives. And Donald Trump in this interview looked horrendous because Mike Wallace on Fox, Chris Wallace on Fox News hit the bottom in regards to where they were willing to go to burnish their credibility. And in this very specific case, it wasn't to set themselves on fire for Donald Trump. 140,000 people have lost their lives. Obvious, objective reality. This virus is getting materially worse. You have Texas and Arizona getting refrigeration trucks because the morgues can't handle the amount of the dead. You have hospitals in Florida and many of these other states reaching heavy, if not full capacity. And a president that is lying, flagrantly, fundamentally lying, has no answers to dealing with this and has prioritized issues of basic economy, or the very least economy in his mind, over public health and public safety. And it's now doing this in the context of sending people back to school. Chris Wallace was doing God's work in this interview, and I think I described him as looking like a younger man who was sent to war by a dominant woman telling him to come back with your shield or come back lying on it. And he did so with the President of the United States. Trump's safe space wasn't all that safe in this interview. And the problem that Trump had to reconcile is that reality is against you. And instead of dealing with that in any human terms, in any rational political terms where you have to deal with your failures, obfuscation, lies, and attacking Fauci and science itself. This is the modus operandi. This is the talking point that these guys are running with. They want to send the blame to the states. They want to blame the Chinese. They want to blame Dr. Fauci. They want to blame everybody else but themselves. And the problem is the public puts the blame squarely where it belongs. On him. On him. This guy right here. This man. That's where they place the blame. Because that's where the blame is deserved to be placed. That said, Trump has his supporters in Congress. And those supporters in Congress have a particular line. And they don't particularly like when you don't follow that line. Interestingly enough, the person who they have grievances with at this moment is one, Liz Cheney, conservative, spawn of Death Lord Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, who is rock hard to the left as far as you can go. Apparently not. They're having their bones against her. And they're taking the piss out of her in a meeting. I don't know if the meeting is still going on. But in the meeting that just took place, they are taking the piss out of Liz Cheney because they didn't necessarily like the fact that she deviated from Trump on certain issues. One of which being Fauci. she defended Fauci. She had sense enough to realize that at very least in this very specific case, the reality is what it is. These cases are clearly going up. The hospitalizations are clearly increasing. It is clearly not a material difference from the standpoint of just because you did more testing. There is clearly a situation here. And yeah, Fauci is the guy that we're going with. He's being honest. You have to deal with the reality as it is. Now, they call her a turncoat. Oh, you're a turncoat. How dare you look at reality and call reality what it is? How dare you not castigate the scientists when we tell you to castigate the scientists? How dangerous that is. How monstrously dangerous that is. That reality in and of itself has become a plaything. Obvious reality has become a plaything for political affairs. They're attacking Cheney. One after the next took their shots at Cheney. And to Cheney's credit, she remained unbowed. Now, one of the operatives or one of the people said, Liz Cheney fears no man. And I love that line. This is not a rah-rah for Cheney. In fact, there's some of the stuff where they're hitting her on where she should be hit on because it's basically the foreign policy position of her family. The Dick Cheneys of the world, meaning this kind of hard right, and at this point it's not even a hard right if you're being honest, political ideology of going into countries and just staying and not necessarily caring about the carnage that is dispensed on the populations to which we do that on. So, this is sort of a mixed bag, right? Yeah, Liz Cheney remains unbowed, and Liz Cheney may fear no man, but the fact of the matter is some of the stuff they're hitting Liz Cheney on here is legitimate fodder to hit her on, considering that is definitely her political ideology. By the same token, you fuck it up when you add this other aspect in where you're going to attack Fauci when Fauci is actually, through this process, has been right. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This video is interesting, or this is interesting to me. For some reason, I love this. I'm not quite sure why I love this. I think it boils down to this notion of political factions and how even within the context of something where you're like, yeah, good job, you're also like, oh, you're still grotesque. What I mean by that is these guys got together on Capitol Hill. This was the first time they were able to get together for a very long time. And they went to the mic one after the next and took their shots at Cheney. All of them. Whatever their particular issue was, going after Cheney. And mainly, and part of this boiled down to you were disobedient to Trump. Now, Liz Cheney has like a 97% voting record from the standpoint of Trump. And this, in and of itself, apparently wasn't enough for these guys who were going after Liz Cheney. To Liz Cheney's credit, she basically told them to go fuck themselves, which I like. How could I disagree with that? Now, what I mean by that is not so much that I like the politics of it. I like the stones of it. What's the cat from Scotland? George Galloway. George Galloway, one of the things that I loved about George Galloway, oftentimes when a person is given a speech and when they're dealing with the public, when the public is against them, there's a peer pressure about it that puts pressure on the individual as if you've singled that person out. And in doing so, the pressure is amplified that much more. George Galloway had this interesting ability where he didn't care about that, and he could tell the entire crowd to go fuck themselves. And he would have no issue doing so. He would do so even if he was on media, talking to a reporter or whatever, and it would become clear that he's telling them, getting angry, go fuck themselves. That's a beautiful trait. It's an interesting trait. And it's one that basically Cheney was showing as she was dealing with all of these people that took their shots at her. Apparently this was somewhat of a raucous meeting, or at the very least somewhat of a tense meeting. And the fact that they were going after her by name, and so many of them were going after her and singling her out, it made it that much more of an interesting meeting, apparently. This was a closed-door meeting, so we don't necessarily have exactly what we have by video. But by the people and the participants who were in the meeting, the picture of it becomes straightforward. This is Politico. I'm going to read parts of this. I would love to read this entire article. This article is fascinating. So, right here. Members of the conservative House Freedom Caucus tore into Liz Cheney during a heated GOP conference meeting on Tuesday, lobbying attacks on her for breaking with President Donald Trump supporting Dr. Fauci and backing her primary opponent against one of their colleagues. Jim Jordan, Freedom Caucus co-founder and one of Trump's top allies, called out Cheney, the top GOP conference chairwoman, for all of the time she has opposed Trump, and began ticking off some recent high-profile examples, according to two sources from the room. While Jordan praised her defense of Trump during the impeachment, he also said that Cheney's recent rebukes of Trump, which have focused on Trump's handling of the coronavirus, his Twitter rhetoric, and his foreign policy, were not helpful. You're not being obedient. That's not helpful. Representative Andy Biggs, head of the Freedom Caucus, even accused Cheney of undermining the GOP's ability to win back the House, and said that if someone has a problem with Trump, they should keep it to themselves. Keep your mouth shut! Keep your mouth shut! Can you imagine that? He gets to the mic and say, basically, shut up. Shut up. Wow. I have to be honest. I would have great qualms with that. I would have great qualms with that. All sorts of things would bother me about that. If that is one man talking to another man, that's problematic. If that is one man talking to another person of a race, that is going to be doubly so because of all the things that have come up associated with it. If it is one man talking to another woman, it is problematic. Regardless of what was going on in his head, it's almost irrelevant to the point of the way it's going to be taken. Shut up. You would have difficulty having one man telling another man to shut up and that being okay with. That jumps the fucking shark. If you have opinions about Trump, keep them to yourself. Wow. That's ballsy. That's balls. And he's talking to Liz Cheney. Oh, wow, that's balls. Think of the pedigree. She's like, I'm a fucking Cheney. You gonna talk to me like this? You gonna talk to me like this? Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh, I love that. I love that. Cheney responded to the criticism from her colleagues by saying that she disagrees with Jordan's assessment and making clear her views are her own. To Jordan, whose arch-conservative Freedom Caucus was a constant pain for GOP leadership when they were in the majority, Cheney said, I look forward to hearing from your comments about being a team player when we were back in the majority, according to two sources in the room. After meeting Representative Gates, who's not a member of the Freedom Caucus, but a closely aligned with the conservative crew, tweeted that Cheney should step down from her position at number 3 as House Republicans. Liz Cheney has worked behind the scenes and his agenda against Donald Trump's against Trump's agenda. Republicans deserve better. Who himself once split with Trump over the war powers. Liz Cheney should step down or be removed. Donald Trump Jr. also took a swipe at Cheney. We already have one Mitt Romney. We don't need another. We also don't need endless wars and advocates for, he tweeted. Cheney, staunch conservative. That's the mind-blowing part of this. Liz Cheney is fucking like, if your country has gotten to the point where all of these people are attacking Liz Cheney, and one of the items they're attacking her for is basically her adherence to just the basic raw science of medicine, practical, applicable science of medicine, and they're attacking her for that, you've gone astray. You've gone astray. If reality is your obstacle, you've gone astray. It just exponentially, you've gone astray. But that's where we are. Strangely enough. Strangely enough. She briefly told reporters after the conference meeting, we're all unified, and declined to answer questions about whether anybody apologized for things getting heated. But Cheney was later spotted on House floor having a conversation with Massey. The pile-on came during the House GOP's first in-person meeting in months with the in-person gathering at Capitol Hill. So right here, tensions over Cheney, the number 3 House Republican, flared during Thursday's closed-door meeting. The venting session began when Gaetz got on the microphone to complain about Cheney and Republican primary challenger to Representative Massey. Gomert, Texas, and Biggs also defended Massey and expressed their concern over the GOP lawmakers playing in primary involving colleagues. Cheney told Massey his issue is with Trump, not with her, since the president has openly called for Massey's ouster. But Massey insisted that his issue was indeed with Cheney. Meanwhile, Cheney responded to Gaetz by telling him she looks forward to seeing his HBO documentary. Ouch! But the attacks on Cheney didn't end there. Representative Chip Roy, who faces competitive re-election battle for the fall, complained that Cheney's support of Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, in the middle of a pandemic, and pointed out that the Democratic opponent for November's general election even retweeted one of Cheney's tweets, praising Fauci. The Wyoming Congresswoman responded by forcefully defending Fauci and saying that she shall focus on defeating the virus, not launching attacks against individuals who are trying to accomplish that mission. At one point during the GOP conference meeting Tuesday, Representative Ralph Northman also chimed in, focusing his ire on the national security issues and Cheney's hawkish foreign policy stance. Norman also brought up Bush administration, to which Cheney, the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, replied, "I am not Bush." Yeah, but I have a hard time seeing how different you are, especially on the standpoint of foreign policy, if not further to the right than Bush. That attack, yes, agreed. The attacks on her against Fauci. If you are attacking the top infectious disease specialist who is giving you his notion based on science, you have gone way fucking astray. This is not pontification on physics. What's before the Big Bang? Or if we're space is expanding, what is it expanding into? That's not that. That's not questions on what reality is and all that other stuff. No. This is very straightforward science and trying to deal with something that is practical, and that is, you can see in some respects how the sausage is being made as it's being made. And your question is, what do you prioritize? Health and human life and dealing with the virus in real terms to which it's presented? Or do you want to just make shit up and come up with whatever is convenient to you and your presidential and your political ambitions? The Trump administration has decidedly tried to do the latter. If Cheney, for whatever degree of rationality that exists in this case, looks at this and says, no, Fauci is right, and you are attacking her for that, you are missed the boat. You are jumped the shark in massive terms. And basically, all of these attacks at the end of the day have one thing in common. You are going against Trump. You're deviating against Trump. And this notion of solidarity and uniformity that right-wingers come up with is astonishing. You talk about the left. This is astonishing. Keep your mouth shut if you have any complaints. Like, share, and subscribe. At the end of that, apparently Cheney remained unbowed. Can't blame her for being so. As abhorrent as she is, fair enough.